Let's go for the actual score. Europa Natural Law.
Greetings, humanity, and welcome to Europa Natural Law, a roundtable transmission dedicated to healing the madness, badness, and sadness plaguing our beautiful, bountiful world. Through regaining our sanity, reclaiming our inborn sovereignty, and honoring our inherent responsibility, we can improve reality. I'm Nemo Jones, reporting for Beauty from Devonshire, Albion, where I write, speak, sing, and cook for freedom, reason, and beauty. You can find all my stuff at nemojones.com. And before we get into today's topic, let's go around and introduce everyone that's here. So let's just go around the circle.
Hi, I'm Yvonne, and I'm from the UK in Norfolk.
Hi, I'm Oscar from Denmark.
Jeffrey Phillips from California.
Derek Bartolacelli. You can find me in France and now on the One Great Work Network. So honored and grateful to be there.
Nice.
Whoop, whoop.
Maria's there too. Bonjour.
Bonjour, Maria West in New Mexico, in the high desert mountains of America.
Great, and also let's come back to you, Maria. And we always ask new guests on the show to just do an introduction, and the question really is how you came to want to put yourself out there and talk about natural law. And the story of how, a briefish
Yes.
story
yes.
of how you came to do that point. Yeah.
I will be brief. Well, I was born into a family of immorality, and that level of evil and exploitation really changed me as a very, very small child and a little girl. And I knew in my heart of hearts and in my soul and spirit that this was off completely. And so I took it upon myself to plot, not just plot my escape, but also plot my sort of moral obligation, if you will, to really out this and live as pure as possible at all costs. And I have paid very dearly and have had to lose everything and rebuild everything, lose everything, rebuild everything, on and on and on. And I'm in the pushing the twilight of my years and am rebuilding once again. So I'm happy to be here.
Great, and welcome to the show.
And just to throw it in, she knew about the Kabbalion when she was like 14 years old, yo. Oh, sorry, 12. Yeah.
12. I was actually gifted a piss-soaked version of it from, I have to say, I think it was from the 1920s or 30s, perhaps. And I might actually still have it somewhere. And it was a friend of mine, a neighbor actually, who was maybe 15, 20 years older than me, who asked me if I wanted these books as they were moving away. And I eagerly received them and just ate it all up and passed it on to my kids. And that's part of the job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we were talking just before I think you came on about the moving on to the Kabbalion. We're going to sort of go through it, chapter by chapter, as it were.
Sweet.
Here on the show, yeah. That's probably coming up shortly. So, but today our subject is sexuality. So, I mean, I could start, or we could start with going round and doing this kind of definition round, which Oscar suggested. So, would anyone like to start with that? Should we do that first? Whoever wants
Yeah,
to
I mean,
jump
I don't
in.
think we need a round. It's just, one person to lay down a quick little primer. And I think Oscar's usually our man for the these defining moments, right? You good with that, Oscar?
I mean, I wouldn't mind hearing everyone's take on it. I mean, it's
Fair enough.
always
Yeah, okay. We
boring
can do that.
and and it gets tiring because you're like, yo, when is the spicy stuff coming? But it just gives such a good foundation for discussion, because then when we go out and explore the different connections, we know the core of the
Yeah.
So yeah, sure, I'll give it a go. Sexuality is, of course, something that all human beings have.
We're losing you a bit, Oscar. I'm not sure why.
Your mic's just getting quiet.
Oh, my mic. Is this better?
That's better.
Yes.
All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, if I had to define sexuality, I wouldn't be able to avoid speaking how it's part of generating life, of reproducing, of carrying on. Or
sorry, I'm finding it really hard to follow you, Oscar, because you're cutting in and out.
Okay, maybe someone else.
Hold your mic closer to your mouth, maybe.
That seems to work.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Suddenly much better. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But still, maybe someone take over here.
Okay, who'd like to jump in?
So yeah, sexual energy. We can take it back to primordial life force energy, that electromagnetic energy. The electro, masculine, magnetic, feminine, and all these things. And it's something that everyone, to the lowest common denominator, can relate with. Yet, unfortunately, we have people that are overly identifying with sexuality, and that's not how it, we're supposed to be, identifying ourselves. And we did a really great chat with Mario West on identitarianism, all this crap, right? But anyway, so sexuality is not just like the act of sexual intercourse and your genitals and all these things. No, it can be the subtle energies that make up life itself. And that's just want to throw in a quick definition right there, because I know there's so much more to it. And
I did watch that talk you and Maria did with Leslie about identitarianism. That was really cool. And as you pointed, sexuality is something that ties in with identity as well. So it can be how we view ourselves. It can be very much tied into our relationship with ourselves, and it is also that relationship with the other, because it's that meeting point, right? So it's also got to do with connection and relationship,
and our relationship with the creator itself.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe kind of like why I also wanted to do this definition round, is that we have both the biological aspect, and we have also that psychological aspect of identity, and there's more arenas as well where sexuality has a role. But I thought that was good to kind of try to narrow it down, so we know what we're speaking about.
I think also we need to consider that, we have the physical aspects, the psychological aspects, but there's also the creative aspects, because it's the blending of the two. When you're talking about electricity and magnetism, you're also talking about the principle of being able to gift and to receive. Gifting is that of the masculine energy, of moving from our hearts out toward a cause or out toward another person. and the feminine is that of receiving. And we need both of those things. And unfortunately, it's like a lot of the generative aspects of these principles are highly exploited. And that's the whole problem with the immorality surrounding sexuality, is that I don't think we have evolved beyond that. What is in it for me? Sort of a platform. And so all the identitarianism with all the different pronouns and all the different evils that surround all that seems to be kind of distorting its purity. And so it's one of sexuality is this polarized divide where we can be brought to the edge of, say, ecstasy, and also be taken into the depths of hell. And how do we bring all those together so that we can really just kind of like honor all the divvied up pieces, because we are in these bodies. And so we're going to be doing some really messed up things. And that's part of the evolutionary quality of it. So I just thought I'd put that out there, because it is a platform for immorality. What is in it for me? How can we exploit this, between the trafficking and I've spent almost 40 years working with survivors of trafficking and SRA. And it's not just sexual trafficking, it's also creativity trafficking of exploiting another's creations and profiting for that and leaving them completely out of that picture. So I know I'm saying a lot, and it is a loaded topic. So I'm happy that we are scratching the surface.
It really is, Maya.
Let's
It's you're just stimulating so much stuff, even just in those couple of sentences that you've just said. Like we could take it in so many different directions. It could go on and on and on. It's I remember taking it back to the creative energy. I remember being told when I was younger, you can't have children. And it's a big story. I will come round to it again because it's going to come into something else I'm going to talk about. But I remember I was living in the woods at the time, and I remember with my partner that I was with at the time, sort of coming to terms with it, or just going, all right, fair enough, whatever. But then being consciously aware that even if you can't have children, it doesn't matter. I've still got all that energy in me, and it's going to come out in some other form. It is very much a creative energy. Yeah. I don't want to I've got so much to talk about. Someone else go. But if you want to say something, Jeffrey, go.
The state and the powers that be have weaponized sexuality quite a bit. A big part of shadow work is figuring that stuff out and unlearning a lot of the it's almost like I grew up in the 90s in Orange County, California, which is a very conservative stronghold, very fake place, inorganic. And I grew up through the AIDS epidemic, and there was a lot of suppression going on, especially in my community, which was, they were basically telling us, hey, if you have sex with gay people or black people, you're going to get AIDS and die, literally. So I had to, just because of growing up in that time, I didn't even know what gay people were, except for on the TV show In Living Color, they had two, really overly fabulous guys on there. And, so that was most, it was a very, very suppressive time. And then it's almost like the inversions happen now. It's all over everything. So it's been weaponized against us quite a bit. And the state does not want people having sex for the most part, because you're not thinking about paying taxes when you're having sex, So the powers that be, and at the same time, they want us to be, the state wants us to be in the nuclear family taxpayer slave mentality, where we're buying houses, buying cars every couple years. We're creating we're having children that will be new tax paying slaves for the system for the future. So they want us to, they brainwashed into us, the nuclear family, and, reject the whole thing. But then at the same time, like there's a lot of anti-LGBT stuff coming out from, certain parties and this and that. And like, if you just go online, people are talking about, all these trans people dancing for children in schools. And it's like, is that really the problem? Is that really happening? Is that really the biggest issue we should all be talking about? So there's a lot of crazy brainwashing and propaganda going on around sexuality. I don't mean to be the doomy sounding guy, but that is a big part of understanding yourself and doing shadow work, because we've had so much stuff crammed into us, no pun intended, that isn't really how we're supposed to be, or is definitely not promoting freedom. It's promoting the complete opposite. But that I'll let that.
Well, I grew up in the 60s and 70s where it was a fucking free-for-all.
Yeah.
You name it, I did it. And it was one of those things where the polarization of shame and the polarization of just balls to the wall, anything goes. And yes, I have to tell you, the trans story time is actually happening. I know people who have children who have been exposed to that. But that aside, let's just get back to the 60s and 70s and the sexualization, weaponizing of sex, because it's been this very incremental way of being. And I've heard all kinds of stories that it was all a CIA psyop or whatever. It is what it is. But it created really, I think, a free fall of all the things, whether you're left, right, or center, it doesn't matter. But whatever your flavor of exploitation is, or your flavor of restriction and closing off the polarity of, I'll just take women for instance, the whore versus the virgin, and then somewhere in the middle. And it's tricky. It's tricky not just only for myself, because I've run the gamut. I've had a girlfriend, so any iteration of whatever you could do, I did it. I tried it, and it wasn't very pretty, because eventually you wake up and you see how immoral you are actually being. When it comes to, you talk about harming self, I did a lot of stuff to harm myself, and allowed other people to harm me, because that was my polarity of going into this sort of victim submission kind of thing. Now, I work with a lot of survivors who have been trafficked, who have been drugged into getting sexually trafficked, sex workers, former sex workers, the whole 9 yards, and women and men and children who have been sexually abused from the moment they were born or the moment they were conceived, okay? Because there is this very, the DNA, our background, whatever our parents were into, we are absorbing all that. So, if your mom was a puritanical, uptight biatch from hell, or if your mom was one of the hefty hoes that was like really into doing whatever, whenever, with whomever, you're going to be running that stuff. So a lot of the work that I do in terms of unwinding sexuality is really looking at the stuff that turns us on, the stuff that repulses us, the stuff that repulses us and turns us on, because we need to have these conversations and we need to unwind all that, concretized stuff of, oh, I can't have that, because we're all running some immoral shit show within. And if you think you're not, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to challenge you, you're lying to yourself. Okay, because this is part of the shadow work, the sexual shadow work that we need to do it is beyond measure. And most people are never going to do it because it's a tricky, slippery slope to do that kind of shadow work and not beat yourself up into a pulp, because we have a shame-based society that tries to harness everything that we say and do. And, oh, I can't feel that. Oh my God, I'm getting all turned on. What's wrong with me? Yeah, we need to ask those questions. And I know I just, once again, said a mouthful because it is so loaded. And I know as I'm talking about this, every one of us I know is like going, oh, we can't go there, but we need to go there. And that is why all the things going on with the trans stuff and the over sexualization of men and women, or the total repression. Oh, I don't have those feelings. I don't do that. It runs the entire gamut. And, these are intense conversations. And I see so many women weaponizing their beauty, their sexuality to get over on men. And the bottom line is I hear, well, millennia of the patriarchy, they're going to get their payback. It's okay to exploit a dude because, I'm not standing for it anymore. And so we have this out of this state triggering that's happening every time we go out, every time we see something very titillating to our senses, every time we deny our sort of impulses or our judgments and criticisms about what other people are doing. And until we have these conversations and just allow it to explode in all directions without sort of weaponizing a reactivity, we're not going to get anywhere. And I just feel like we're just circling the toilettenbowl, if for lack of a better way to say it.
Shitty cycle.
Yes, indeed.
Didn't mean to cut you off there, but yeah, it's not even my turn. But if you're done, maybe Nino.
No, yeah.
The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, one of their steps is sexual inventory. And the 12 steps, I tell people, that are having a hard time comprehending what shadow work is. I'm like, go get a blue book and do the 12 steps. Like, that's a perfect little structure for it. But the sexual inventory part tends to be the hardest part for most people, because they got to write down everything they've ever done and go and make amends with people. And it's very intense. But yeah, I just because you mentioned that, it is a very not fun thing to have to go through.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So we had a bit of a discussion on the Telegram group about the thumbnail, because I proposed this one, which I went with in the end because I didn't have time and couldn't think of anything better. But I'm just going to I'll put the file up. Hold on 1 second. Well, it's not the thumbnail, but that's the image that I used. And I just really think it's a great way into thinking about the subject, actually. I mean, I thought, oh, hold on, isn't that symbol about that? about sexuality, like at a deep level, you know. And when I looked at the symbol, and, you know, with a bit of help along the way towards sort of interpreting it, especially this version where it's interlaced like this, or, you know, kind of folding in on itself. I think it's a really profound symbol of sexuality. That's what it says to me, actually. The way it hits you, because it's, I mean, so to sort of break it down, you know, it's basically the two triangles. I mean, someone else could probably do a better job, but I'll just kind of roughly go through it. But, you know, we have the two triangles. So the one that's pointing up is no, hold on. It's known as the sword, right? Am I right?
Or you can say the phallus and the chalice as well.
The phallus and the chalice.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've not heard that. The phallus and the chalice. Yeah.
Well, it's a sword. It's a sword in the chalice, but
sword and the chalice is the one that I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It's
You know
the
me, I just have the
masculine and
rhyme, man.
feminine. It's the masculine and feminine.
Exactly.
The symbols in Chinese medicine, the upright triangle, and then the upside down triangle.
Yeah. And
I want to just chime in into that, because our hips, in a way, they're kind of that chalice. They're kind of like that cup, or that hole that holds all of our, you know, emotions and our desires, in a way, right? Like our hip bones. I just wanted to add an association I had with that.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because when you said that, I mean, I don't know if I'm going off on one, but I was thinking, well, then what would represent the phallus in that aspect? And I thought of the diaphragm, which is the breath, the root of the breath, which is just interesting because we've been talking about spirituality and the spirit, and that relating to breath. That kind of, we were touching on that, I think, last week. But just to carry on a little bit on this symbol, what it kind of says to me is, so it's the interplay between the masculine and the feminine. And what struck me about this symbol is that it has this kind of it seems kind of aggressive on first view, but when you actually look at it for a while, you kind of realize that, well, everything is also soft. Like if you look at the inside of it, it's actually soft. It's kind of, the outside is hard, and that's kind of represents the masculine and feminine as well, in a different aspect. So that the inside is soft, the outside is penetrating. And so just to tie that into what's already been said, I think Maria said something about, I think the words you used were the offering and receiving aspect of life, or of an interplay.
Indeed.
Yeah, and then obviously we have this sort of shadow, which you've also kind of touched on, is, you know, which correlates directly with those. So just to sort of really make this clear, so offering kind of turns into domination. That would be the kind of shadow aspect. And then receiving becomes submission. And that's really how, in the world, we live in a sub-dom world. I think that's how I've kind of described it. I think, yeah, you know,
that's
I think
a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think I feel like most people are in this submissive act. This act of submission, you know, everyone has their own inherent freedom, but they act out this submission to the thought control, the mind control, whatever. So it's kind of an ongoing act of submission, and then obviously there's a dominating aspect as well, but which is another.
We have two different nervous systems. We have the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. And the parasympathetic is feed and breed, I think. And men, especially these days, we're very stuck in our sympathetic, and it takes a woman to pull us out of that. It takes the softness and the like it's weird because you can feel yourself fall out of the sympathetic into the parasympathetic. You could feel it go through you, and if you're stuck in the sympathetic, it's going to be really hard getting along with the opposite sex because you're constantly in this fight pattern. And that's kind of, I see that in that image too, the duality of the two nervous systems. I think there's three nervous systems, but the two that we kind of mostly fight with are those two, especially as men, just being so stuck because we're trained from birth to compete, and we're just so stuck in the sympathetic, and I think they've been suppressing the parasympathetic, the knowledge of it. I think it's been occulted, especially to women, because they don't want us connecting like that. They want, the state lives off of conflict. That's why they have the two-party paradigm, and like you're always fighting with your neighbor. They brainwash us into that, and they because just when you look at divorce rates and stuff, it's just like, how is this not working? Like, this is wild. But they the powers that be, the state, whoever it is, the media, they've been just brainwashing us into just the inversion of the truth, basically.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. Sorry, Derek, we always do it, don't we?
Yeah,
You
no.
wanna go?
I mean, I'll just say that what
Yeah.
Jeff is talking about. In conclusion, it's like the Matrix is designed to keep the imbalance, and especially with the fight or flight mode and this and that, it's very difficult for women to be in their feminine. That's all.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna add to, Derek, because when you were saying that, Jeffrey, I was thinking, fucking hell. I think all men and women are in the fight and flight on the majority. We've all been conditioned. No one knows whether to be a man, woman, and that's what I wanted to go over. I put it on the chat. Sexuality, what the uality means, and so it's what defines, like, what are we, like, where is our sex? Like, people are not asking that question, like, where are we? How would you, what quality or what condition are we at with our sex as an individual and sharing it with a partner? And it's it's been an ongoing thing for many, many years, and it's really coming to a head now that there's a hell of a lot of confusion out there. I've spent probably the last, I don't know, many years just completely coming away from sex because I'm like fucking sick to death of it. Like what we've been born into, like, not good sex. I'm talking about the conditioning of it, being bombarded with it. All is mind and mind is all. Like, even though I knew my own mind and what I liked and what I disliked, we're still getting affected by what everyone else is going on about. It's just been fucking too much. So I made a decision to go, right, I'm stepping back from all this, because there was something in me where I always craved that sacred union. That's what I craved, and I wasn't particularly getting it. Not any fault of the male side of things, it's just lack of education. There's no knowledge there, or there wasn't when I was growing up. There was no knowledge at all about such things. Our knowledge was aspiring to what you saw on telly, like mimicking like pop stars or pornography. And I just remember growing up and thinking, fucking hell, is there something wrong with me? Because I don't actually feel like that. And even though all your other, like your friends and your peers and that around you, they seem to be behaving in that way. And I grew up feeling isolated, thinking that there's something actually wrong with me. And in the end, I just thought, no, I'm stepping back from this. And I'd rather personally not even go there and have sex unless it is on that level where I'm actually meeting a partner and we're sharing that energy together. And I just look at the young people now, and I just really feel for them, because yeah, there's just not enough education out there. And I don't know, something you said, Jeffrey, earlier about the nervous system thing. Can I talk for a little bit or not? Am I going to get on?
Do it.
Is that all right? Is that all right? I'm just going to tell you a little story like I normally do. Like when I was younger, I went through a stage like with my menstrual cycle where I just it used to be so painful. I just used to pass out. So there was something going on down there that obviously in our culture we don't. You've got period pain, so you go to the doctors, and mine were pretty extreme. Anyway, I went through test upon test and they could never find anything. So then it went to higher tests in a hospital. And I had this doctor turn around to me and said, or a consultant, and said, do you know how serious this could be? You might not ever be able to have children. And I went, what? They said, we're going to put you through some more tests. So I went out into the waiting room and I went, nah, I'm running from this. I don't like where this is going at all. So I came away from that situation. I just thought, well, I'm going to have to just deal with this myself. And I was really lucky. It was about a year later, I came across this book called Her Blood is Gold. This one. And it was just such a massive eye-opener for me, because it speaks about how our culture, the women, since the feminism sort of act started coming in really strong, women, even more so than like my mother and grandmother, were forced to go out to work because the parents couldn't afford to keep a roof over their head just on one wage, right? So women have so slowly started to, not only for necessity reasons, but also there's a lot of women out there that want the same things as men. Like they want that big career in the corporate world or whatever, and so they're using that action, that male energy all the time. Well, anyway, to cut a long story short, this book speaks about how the American Indian tribe used to cope with the menstrual cycle, and they had moon lodges. So it was a very sacred time. It's like the woman's most powerful time when she's actually going through her menstruation. So the tribe actually respected it. So the women in that time of the month would go to the moon lodge, and it was almost like a shamanistic experience, because it's a time where if the woman stops and they're with all the other women, because when women menstruate, they're in that sort of tribal situation, they all kind of start menstruating at the same time. Anyway, so the men accepted that. So they would take care of the children and they would bring in the food, so the woman could have those like 3 or 4 days with the other women, and they could, it was a chance for them to process all the stress and all the strife, all the things that were going on in the tribe that weren't quite right. It was a chance for them to face that, process it, and then come out the other end. And because it was their most spiritual time, it just, they had no distractions of looking after the children, no distractions of the men of the tribe. It gave them a chance to connect with spirit and bring the so like if there was any kind of disharmony within the tribe, it gave them the answers that they actually needed, and then they would come back to the tribe and push the tribe on. And it really made me think when I read this book, how in our culture, because women are not allowing themselves that time off, they're just becoming more and more like lunatic, like stressed out and fucked up.
That's a
Anyway,
perfect
Lunatic.
Sorry. It
Sorry.
comes from Luna, which means moon, right? So when we come,
Voilà.
and I think what you're speaking to here as well, Yvonne, is also how sexuality ties into the hermetic principle of rhythm, right? And
yes, yeah,
see that with fertility, because there's a stage in our life where that's what we're able to do, and then later on in our life, sexuality doesn't play as big a role. We have or at least we have a different relationship to it by then, right? When we become granddads and grandmothers, and that's not to say that it cannot still have a role, because I think for me, when I think about the psychological aspect of sexuality, there's also this love of life. There's also like that kind of the love of existing, the love love of beauty, the wanting to have a relationship with the world, have a relationship with the universe and this existence of being. And whoa, that sounds like a big thing, but I just wanted to throw that in there. It's not, it just, yeah. Anyways, I feel if I had to kind of touch on or like try to outline some of the things that we've spoken about, I started out by saying, that of course the biological connection with the sexuality, and then there's also the psychological one. But as Mary has touched upon, there's also the morality, and that's, I think, a very interesting connection to explore, and also something Jeffrey touched upon, that is how like hypersexualization and sexuality also can be like a distraction, and how that can play into demoralizing society. So that's also like the sociology. So again, kind of like psychology, but when you're looking at our culture, when you're looking at how we are at a societal level, what is happening with our sexuality, right? So I think those four are the ones that I see are kind of like the big bridges, and then there's, as we're all agreeing, there's like a very reference to Maria's book, F Wide Open. It really is a huge topic that with so many important nuances and details, and I'm so glad we're talking about it.
Yeah. So in the early 2000s, I've mentioned it before, I was a rock star in Hollywood with $1 million in the bank and a revolving door of women. And, Jung talks about meeting your shadow. And boy, oh boy, did I meet my shadow back then. Like society says and media says, like, to be a rock star is the coolest thing in the world, and having all those girls is great, and the money is just so cool. But I was the most depressed I've ever been in my life back then, just not knowing if I was ever going to feel again, because I had a universal adapter for the world. Basically, I was able to do anything I want for a while, and I got anything I want. And that's not I don't want to use the word natural, because natural is an appeal, it's a fallacy, but like, we're not supposed to be, it's the same thing with like politicians. You're not supposed to have that much power, and like only crazy people are attracted to that kind of thing. And you get back on subject. So yeah, so a lot of people, meet their shadow, like I met my shadow at a time when I wasn't, like capable of dealing with the emotional and physical or not physical, but emotional and spiritual repercussions of just like excess. And so I, it took a long time to dig myself out of that hole, and I lost all that. Like that all went away overnight. And like, you hear all the time about, people, celebrities, rock stars and stuff, unaliving themselves over things like that. And so I was, I definitely met my shadow back then, because it was not cool. But you're supposed to, the recovery of that is learning to control that part of yourself. I think Jung said the exact quote was, become a monster and then learn to control it. I think what he said. And I think when I heard that, that really, 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 really resonated to me in my experience of like being a complete, trash hole of a person. And like, yeah, I don't know. It's been tough.
Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that.
It
I
ain't a
think
walk
that
in the
is an
park.
important nexus point for all of us to realize, "Oh, what the fuck am I doing?" Because we have to remember, with every encounter, every act of sexuality, there's an energy exchange that is very substantive, especially for women. I counsel a lot of younger women who talk about their body count like it's a badge of honor. It's like, for fuck's sake, ladies, no. And they don't understand why they're so depressed, why they're so angry, why they're suicidal, why they just hate everybody, and why their bodies are going to shit, literally. Because if you're not having the highest form of sex and you're just chasing one orgasm after another, or chasing some boy, some dude, a whole band, just to up your self-reflection of yourself, or to identify that I am beautiful and I'm desired. And for a lot of people, men and women, that's good enough. And to what you were sharing, Yvonne, it is really important for men and women to come to a point. It's and to really question. And I certainly had to go through. I've gone through two bouts of conscious celibacy. I'm going to call it that. 17 years total, where I'd had enough. So I know that point where you're just, and I was disgusted by how I felt, disgusted by the emotional exchange, the transference that happens with everybody that I was with, because I took on not just their stuff, but everybody they were with. I took on all of that. And my body was just going, ugh, enough. And there's a certain healing that takes place through celibacy where you're not identifying by the people that you fuck, or how many people you fuck, or how many times you do it. Okay. And a lot of people, the body count is like really important. And when I hear it, I'm just like, wow, okay. There's a lot of work to be done here. And we're not quite there. So I want to acknowledge Yvonne, I want to acknowledge you, Jeffrey, because these are those points where we're like, whoa, okay, all right. Maybe this isn't so good for me. And
Like step away from the vehicle?
Yeah, step away from the, move along. And there's certain points. I know that for me, I'm from San Francisco, so everything and anything goes, okay? And there was a community that I was involved with where I learned a lot. It was the conscious BDSM community. And believe it or not, in order to be part of that community, you had to learn the certain protocol. Dominant submission is a very, very delicious realm to sort of trot around in, but there are rules. And the big rule that I learned is it's actually the sub who is in charge. And so that being said, anybody who wanted to dominate a sub would have to petition, write a letter of petition to the sub. And just sort of, it's kind of a wooing, if you will. And there's a certain power energy play that came back and forth and back and forth. And that was the first time that I was conscious of the masculine, feminine energies within, and not within man or woman, but within everybody who tries to have a relationship, because you're not having a relationship necessarily with that person, but it's your masculine feminine within that is interfacing with the masculine feminine within the other person. And there's a totality of existence in that. And I used to think, this is all bullshit. And then I just remember seeing examples of letters because I was curious. I didn't know what this was about, and seeing just the examples of letters and just being floored because they were essentially love letters addressing each of our longings to reach that state of ecstasy or be completely fucking annihilated. And I'll just leave it at that. It was amazing. It was really an amazing, just my cells just kind of exploded and expanded. And there is a morality involved because there has to be you got to check yourself, because is there an exploitive component for you and for the other person? Is there consent? And even if there is consent, is it really moral? And so I know for me, I went through kind of like this kind of head banging, gnashing kind of thing where I was just so conflicted because I would sit and apply each one of the Hermetic principles to the shit that I was doing, and none of it made sense. So there is that. So it is very complex, and just wow, just kind of like fascinating to undertake. But you have to be willing to admit that your arguments are wrong, they are incorrect, and so it's not a one-off black and white concretized thing. You're going to be exploring just a lot of different flavors and intensities and a lot of contradictions.
Dang, we should change the show's name to Bay Area Natural Law. I think all three of us were from the Bay Area on the bottom here.
Yeah, but the rest are from the old continent in the UK. But yeah, that's a hell
I
of a
spent
story.
a lot of time in Europa, so there was a lot of things going on there during my upcoming years as well. Lots of stuff. So
great time in France too. And you might have to share a story later in regards to your trips in India and these fake ass tantric guru motherfuckers and all this stuff.
Indeed.
Weak ass small dick energy, wannabe yoni or goddess worshippers and all this crap. Yeah. So yeah, what's up with people just searching outside of themselves for validity and all these things, and like being proud of a body count? And why are people so eager to say this word body count? And like don't people in like the morgue and other you know, like let the body sit the floor and all this shit. Like,
I'd like to speak a bit to that, because I think that's where it ties into psychology, and you can see how there's a conscious, at the conscious level, there's like a program which is fairly new, and then at the unconscious level, there's the instincts, which are very fucking old, and it's well, I don't know if you want to laugh, but it's I mean it's a waste of time, and it's a bit sad when an individual has beliefs about what their ideal partner is, but they end up becoming bitter or not really loving that individual, and it becomes an unfortunate relationship for both, right? So I think that's how it kind of ties in, that there's this cultural program which is fairly new that is about sexual liberation, and I'm all for that. I'm all for not repressing sexuality, not having prohibition, not making a sin out of our sexuality, out of this creative power. And the reason I'm not for repressing that is because ultimately we will not be able to manifest freedom without pouring into that cause our creative life force. And that does not mean that we don't get to do what we love to do, but we need, like, imagine all of that wasted sexual energy, all of that raw power that is just that can potentially be invested in activism and education and you know, all of the things that we believe we cannot do without mommy and daddy state. And that's also a way the psychology and sexuality tie into each other, right? Is our psychological relationship to our parents, and how we, if we don't understand that, we can end up in situations where we want someone to make up for the things that mommy didn't do or dad didn't do. And now I'm kind of ranting. I do want to add one more thing, because Maria, you were kind of touching on this with the body count and the consequences of it, of being with a lot of different individuals. Something Jeffrey also touched on, that how we can try to be honest with ourselves, how we really feel about it, and maybe even anyways. What I wanted to say is I found this expression, which I thought was really fun, about this biology thing called microchimerisms, which is also called as a joke, semen demons. And the idea is basically that the information that the male passes on to the female is stored in the female's brain. So imagine how, if you got a lot of immature or psychologically ill males, how that may affect the female, right? But also, I mean, I'm not against being, like, if people want to be with other people, I imagine that it can actually, for some, be something that they gain a lot of value from, and they might even like develop and mature from. So I don't think necessarily it has to be one size fits all when it comes to how we deal with relationships. I know I said that was going to be my last thing, but I do have one thing, which is something that maybe it's because, I don't know, I just wanted to say that it really is an important topic to bring up when it comes circumcision. This is where the biology and morality really meet, because of course it's immoral to cut up the body of a child, because that child does not have the ability to consent. And you'll hear victims of circumcision come up with excuses like, well, it's for hygiene, and so on, right? But what is important to understand biologically is how it affects the psychology, because biologically, there's gonna be a handicap for life if the circumcision happens at such an early stage that the nerves that will give the individual a feeling of connection, a feeling of orgasm in the same degree that an individual who is not circumcised will arrive at. That will be inhibited, that will be retarded, if you will, and that's why it's so immoral as well. Is that it's evil. You're limiting the value of an individual, but if we want to go a bit conspiracy in it, you can see, well, what would the intention would that be? What is the result when an individual cannot arrive at that level of connection and feeling of relief or feeling of union? Well, I think what I'm trying to say is that does create an individual who, unless they really do a lot of healing, they're gonna be prime or like good quality slaves or good quality order followers or soldiers that will try, like they'll believe in an ideal. They'll believe, well, I will get that union in this religious or abstract or political form of I don't know, like paradise or this fantasy, if you will, about that we can get in a way. But while I'm trying to arrive at that, I'm serving an immoral or evil cause. And yeah, I'm ranting a bit here, but I just thought circumcision was something I wanted to bring up, because that's definitely one thing that's tied to sexuality and immorality.
Yeah.
Remember Game of Thrones?
Sorry, can I just say we're just hitting an hour, so sort of think about wrapping up, sort of thing. But yeah, carry on, whoever was speaking. Sorry.
Remember Game of Thrones? They had all those soldiers that were neutered because they were better soldiers, because they weren't distracted by things. There was a show called Severance recently that was really interesting, that had the same idea of like having like part of your life, like going to work, you don't remember it the next day. They cut your brain in half basically, and you have two different personalities, one that goes to work and that's basically what a big metaphor for what the powers that be want. I remember having a out of body experience from the pain of being circumcised. Same type of out of body experience I had when my mom spanked me with a wooden spoon when I was like too young to be punished that way. We have intergenerational trauma that we don't even know about, that stuff our grandma, dealt with, that imprinted on our mothers, that imprinted on us. We don't even know what we're dealing with half the time. So for them to, set us back by doing things like that, and just like someone diagnosed me as being hypersexual. So when I was a kid, and ADHD. So they were like testing meds on me when I was a kid. But like my teachers loved me. They were like, this is the most, this is the brightest kid in class, but he's drooling in his chair right now, because they were trying to get me to behave better. And I recently did a debate with a carnivore doctor that is promoting this GAPS diet to autistic kids and ADHD kids. And it's the complete inversion of the truth. And it's just, I feel like it's the same thing for when they were just trying to test. They just want us to behave better. And like this lady's whole method for this diet is to shut the kid's immune system down so he's more behaved. So he's easier for us to deal with, but by feeding this kid a diet that's going to destroy his health for the rest of his life. Like it's just, there's so much horrible crap going on. We don't even have a chance. And then they throw us in school. We're just compete, memorize, compete, pecking order, get, popularity, like all this garbage. We have and they aren't teaching us how to talk to each other. They aren't teaching us how to express our emotions. They're just, and then our parents weren't taught that either. And the generation before that was at war, so it's like, we got a lot of work to do, and everybody wants to point out, everybody wants to blame everyone else. And, getting back, I forgot the trans thing. I wasn't saying trans aren't dancing for kids or that it is great. I just see the tens of thousands of teachers that are actually essaying children to be a far bigger issue. And I don't see anyone talking about it. I just see people complaining about the poor decisions by children's parents by not vetting the dancer they hired to come dance for their kids. I just see the other one being a much bigger problem. And I see the one being kind of a divide and conquer tactic that has just been, it just doesn't leave the news. I just never stop seeing people talking about that. And they're completely ignoring the fact that, we just need to be doing a lot more inward pointing than outward pointing. I think as a society, it's very easy to point out and blame everyone else when we are fucked up. But yeah, I'll let that one go.
Yeah, and what about those? There's too much outward expressions with the inverted rainbow flag shit with the throat chakra portion of it castrated the fuck out of it. And it's like a mini castration when you're circumcised, and there's like 1,000 different nerve endings that go in there, and it's like castrating men at an early age being traumatized on all different levels, planes, mental, physical, emotional, all that stuff. And it's kind of stunting their emotional IQ or whatever already from the get-go and all this shit. So yeah, it's really sad. And and then they get jabbed up with whatever the hell. And there's a mixture of male and female DNA, like from like aborted fetal tissue cell type of stuff that is getting injected into babies. And so voila, some of the concoction that creates gender dysphoria and all this stuff. And the fact that the inverted rainbow, you have the red root chakra on the top. And so that's why people are identifying it so much with, that's just like, it's always on the brain, sex on the brain and all this stuff. And that's what we hear in poop culture, pop culture, music, and all these things. And even folks in the UK with what's that guy's name? Ed Sheridan or some stuff. And like, just a global #1 hit of just like, I'm in love with your body, and
Ed Sheeran
body. And then there's more body counts and all this stuff. And so like, it's just below the belt, lower sense orientation towards sex and all this stuff. And speaking of sex, it's the
time, Derek.
the common I don't know what you said, man, but there's a lot of lacking of proper love making in the bedroom. It's just sex, and a lot of guys are just like masturbating into women type of shit. I think I heard Maria say that numerous times on her show. I mean, check out Love.
Oh, yes. We talk about it, friction sex. Oh, yeah. How fun for us.
Right. And so in that setting, do you usually come across, like a proper, energy exchange, or is it just kind of just getting a nut off and all this stuff? And, I got mine, and maybe I'm not worried about their orgasm sometimes or whatever the hell. And just like, it's just, it always comes from within, as you were talking about, Jeffrey. And it's like going back to the blade in the chalice, if you will, or the phallus in the chalice of the, hexagram, the two triangles, perfectly balanced and aligned. That's the balance, the hieros gamos, the inner masculine and inner feminine energies working in tandem, that electromagnetic life force energy oscillating, right? So, and it's having a proper relationship with the intimate and subtle energies of creation itself. And we it's just like, for men, it's like really tapping into that feminine essence of intuition and that kind of stuff. And that's why, Mari and I have talked about this of just, the older generation of guys, they're kind of like emotionally dumb or dense or whatever and stuff. And so there's already that imbalance within themselves. We can see this being manifested in their behaviors, right? So it's just with the men, it's kind of like the projecting energy, and the women, it's the receptive. So that's why, men are majorly the ones that rape, not just women, but other men and all this stuff. It's a sick world out there, right? And it goes back to a fuck ton of manipulations, as you guys said. And it goes back to even, the fall of Atlantis, and even in off-world situations where females are used, captured, and forced into like forced breeding programs. This is how some of the archons are able to, manipulate genetics and kind of create these, hybrid species, and, birth their race into like our reality field and elsewhere, right? So there's, talking about generational trauma, talk about eons of trauma, especially just from the feminine side of things, this equation, this imbalance that we have in the world, right? So the manipulation on 3D level and all this stuff. There's the chemical imbalances, just from the polluted elements in the air and all this stuff. And it's just, people need to navigate this reality and understand and take back their full responsibility of their energetic integrity, because it all goes back to energy, right? Vibration and frequency, and being comfortable in your own skin, being aligned with moral code and the elements that are around, right? But can't ignore and heal ourselves from, things like the generational trauma, porn, like as a man who watched too much porn growing up and this and that. It's like you're having a lot of sexual thoughts and images flash in your mind, and it's not a natural thing, and it takes a while to purge that out of your system, just kind of like how women have to purge some of those residual crappy energies from these guys, right? And it's not like not man hating or whatever the hell, right? So and then there's like the programs of the hookup culture a little bit, and people feeling left out because my body count isn't high enough or whatever. It's like you don't, I forget the thing, but anyway. So, and then if people are with women that are, flashing their bodies and all that stuff on social media a little bit too much, they really need to cleanse on a multidimensional level, because, there are things such as like astral rape, and just, if men are going to be, masturbating to women, in their mind and all that stuff, that's energetic frequency can still carry over to them. Right. So I'm gonna leave it at that. It's just really take back ownership of your own true divine sacred sexuality, and walk with it with authority. You are the author of your book, right? So
There's loads of things there, Derek, that you can, loads of stuff that you were triggering off in me. You brought up epigenetic. I can fucking always find someone say that word for me. I can never fucking say it. It's got too many syllables in it.
Genetics.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what you were kind of referring to there, Derek, in a way. Like the population now, we are still, what are we seeding? What are we seeding, or and what we putting our attention to? And it's fucking hell. Going back to pornography. So, as I said to you, like,
going back to it.
no, coming away from it, because to me, my observation of pornography, I don't care who you are, if you're going to sit in front of pornography, it works very, very quickly. That's what it's designed to do. It works. Even if I'm not into it and I don't really want to take it in, it's gonna fucking work. Right? That's how powerful it is. But it only takes that energy up to a certain point in your energetic system. It's keeping us in the lower dimensions. That's what it's doing. It's not allowing us to bring the energy fully up so we can open the crown up here. That's why, they're on a win-win. Like if
Keep
people
speaking
manage
to that.
if people want to reach like their full potential and let all that energy come up and open the real crown, so we become sovereign, then there's no way we're going to be slaves. So no wonder it's so fucking, there's so much out of it. There's so much out there that is distracting us from potentially what we could be, within ourselves, and then joining with the opposite sex and having that sacred union. There's
That's
much,
why the
so
thumbnail is awesome with the two triangles. And as I was also saying a bit
what I
with
just said, man. You don't have to cut her off just to say that, dude.
Yeah, anyway, there's so much. Anyone that's listening to this that is stuck in that realm of feeling dissatisfied with sex and not being happy, just look into it a little bit more. Maybe step away from it if you have to for a little while, and research and look into the way the energetic system actually works. That there's so much more potential for us out there that could be a lot more enjoyable than just like a quick shag and feeling depressed afterwards. I'll leave it at that. Go on, someone else say.
I thought with that you were speaking of, that it's not the power or the power isn't really rising up and being integrated at a higher level, that life force. I thought that really does tie into what Derek was speaking on about that there's no vulnerability involved. There's no real intimacy, emotional intimacy in a lot of the sexual interactions that people have, if they're only aspiring to have a pleasurable experience. If they don't realize that there can be more to it, and there can really be that rich, what's it called, that goal, if you will, of growing and becoming, as you're saying, Yvonne, more sovereign, right? And I think if it's a force or power to be healed and to be integrated, it does really also tie into what you were speaking on, Maria, with the deliberate celibacy. Because who wants to be with someone who is we want to mirror, we want to grow. Who wants to be with someone who doesn't want to be with themselves? That's not really being with someone. That's not really having that relationship. So as soon as you really told the people who are like, oh no, but I can't find anyone, as soon as you actually want to be someone, that's where that mirroring happens very organically, right? And yeah, I mean, being able to feel one's boundaries, being able to respect one's own and other people's boundaries, that's something that is super interesting to explore in relationship with sexuality as well, and responsibility. I think that's where I feel is the key, because we've spoken a lot about how we're sexually fucked, we're screwed, right? So I think that's I wanted to see if I could find something that was on the positive side, and that's what I arrived at, was the responsibility and that thing that you were speaking to as well, Yvonne, with that life force being able to be integrated and that self mastery and self control. Yeah.
Derek brought up pickup culture earlier, and the influencers among pickup culture are manipulating natural law. Basically, hypergamy is a natural law that pretty much promotes the balance of masculine and feminine. And these guys in the hookup culture, they use it to manipulate. Basically, it's pretty unfortunate. But yeah, I don't know. It just popped up into my head when Derek mentioned that.
The women weaponize that as well.
Really?
Because in hypergamy, it's the feminine who's always going to look for the better guy, the guy with the mostest. And so it becomes about women weaponizing their beauty, their sexuality. If you want this, then you better have this, that, and the other thing. And it is, it's a pretty sad state of affairs. Just the stuff that I witnessed, because then we get stuck in what I call the Matrix's 5 sense reality trap. When we have 7, you know, we've got our 6th sense, guided by the third eye, you know, the realm of all possibilities, what is known and yet to be known. And our 7th sense of gifting and giving, it's our innate generosity and care that Mark Passio talks about. I consider that our 7th sense, the masculine principle of gifting, giving, the electrical self-defense, and then the feminine principle of receiving, the magnetic, the non-aggression principle. I mean, these things they all get forgotten when we're stuck in our senses. And of course, what a better way to exploit and keep people in the matrix, stuck in their pain and their 5 senses, through pornography, through the greed of what am I going to get, the illusion of weaponized reciprocity. It's like some of the conversations that I'll find myself in the middle of getting invited into these podcasts with these youngish people. And, you know, I check off a lot of boxes and they don't realize how old I am. And so when I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this utter bullshit and then I just drop a few bombs relating to natural law, they have no idea what I'm talking about, you know, because it's all about getting off and what I'm going to get and who needs to get me off. And because I'm a queen, don't you know? I mean, it just cracks me up. I have to mute myself sometimes because I cannot stop laughing. And, you know, I'm snarky, so I get sarcastic when I hit that proverbial wall of fucking hell, you know. Yeah, so I wanted to acknowledge our 7 senses, and acknowledge, in order for us to be the heart-based new humanity, we have to be in our hearts. We can't be stuck in our dicks and our pussies, pardon my French, you know. It's like, but that's where the consensus reality, as defined by the powers that want to be in the matrix, that's where it is. And that's where you have all of the, you know, just, I mean, men going their own way. I don't blame them. And that's the thing, the whole MGTOW, I don't blame them, you know, because a woman who is not in her power and is overcome by the dark masculine that has been dumping into her body over the millennia because she thought it was all that and a bag of chips. I mean, there's a certain level of responsibility that we all need to cop to. And, you know, naming these things is I think is a start. And it brings us back to full circle to, I think, our true divine creative nature. In order to be in our hearts, we have to like really address the heartbreak and the soul sucking aspect of heartbreak.
Yeah,
Damn.
it's so true. It's you know, people go on, don't they? You know, like with feminism and like men hating and all that. I'm just fucking sick to death of it because everyone's hurting. Everyone is, and it's yeah, it's time to heal. And I think women can come forward and start that process, really. And yeah, going back to the I didn't get a chance to finish. You know, I was talking about that book, Her Blood is Gold. When I took on what it said in that book, it is like healing, yeah, that womb gate, I suppose. When I went through that process, I only went through one cycle of my period. And go back to the beginning of the story when the consultant said, "Oh, I don't think you're going to be able to have children." I went through one cycle of what that book taught me about how the American Indians dealt with the menstrual cycle and the way that benefited the tribe, the men, the children, everyone. And I conceived after one cycle, and I weren't even trying to. And yeah, I think women need to, yeah, as Maya said, yeah, stop using their pussies to get what they want from men. That would be a start.
It's all
Yeah.
about balance.
Keep it from the heart. But sorry, Phil, real quick, Mario, because you've spoken in the past quite a bit about, you know, how women have that kind of like that second heart within the yoni sphere, if you will.
I always say that, you know, men have two minds, the heads of their dicks and the brains, and women have two hearts, our yonis and our actual hearts. And those have to be active, and we have to know the difference. And that's a process. That is the shadow work process in a nutshell, is for women to acknowledge their two hearts, and for men to acknowledge the split within themselves so they can join that and also encompass and embody their own feminine nature, which I think is key. And I think this is where, someone pointed out that they thought that I was very anti-trans and all that. I'm really not. In fact, my longtime girlfriend is now a man. So I have nothing against that, but it really is about the sort of denial about the unowned pain and suffering that each one of us has, where we feel like we have to be a certain way and express that certain way, and it's got to look like this and this and this and this and this. And this is where we get caught up in the appearances, the illusion of appearances, rather than really getting to the heart of the matter and really addressing those broken parts of us without identifying with those broken parts and becoming them. And then spewing those broken parts out into the world at large as some kind of weapon to blame and to seek some kind of revenge or retribution or payback that the world or other people owe you. And this comes, once again, full circle to self-responsibility. How are you harming yourself? By your own thoughts, your ways of how you neglect yourself, the ways you think about other people, your rage, that you try to mask off as is something else. And I know we could go on and on. It's been a really cool conversation.
We could, couldn't we? You just reminded me when you said the word cut off, because before, I don't know, it was a couple of days ago when I was looking into the word sex. So I looked into where it comes from. And there's obviously lots of different things, but there was one and it said cut off, severed. That's where the word comes from. Being cut off or severed. So maybe we should, when we're talking about sex in the way that we're talking about it now, maybe we should just call it making love instead. Maybe.
Indeed.
Yeah, because how many times is that in our culture, that word used? So we're all going around sort of like voodooing it, aren't we, in a way? Going sex, 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 because we're cutting off from each other. It's just something severed there, isn't it?
Replace the X with the H. You got the hex. What's next?
Yeah.
Heck.
It's been a pleasure to discuss this topic with all of you. Thanks, Mary, also for joining us. It's been lovely.
Thank you so much. Blessings to all of you. Thank you for your great work, all of you, because we can't do this alone. It's going to take all of us.
Yeah.
We'll be adding your link to under our video descriptions to your channel, Love, Truth, and Beauty.
Thank you.
Am I on mic? Yes. I just wanted to jump in and say before I round up, I just wanted to go back to this just for a minute and just sort of talk about it in this general way that I kind of tend to bring this perspective of like, this symbol is about expansion and, reception. I was actually meditating on it earlier, and I was thinking about responsibility and the way that also relates to that, the ability being like the masculine principle and response being the feminine principle. There's no action without there's being a context. So they're one and the same kind of thing. So that's to take it to a more sort of metaphysical level. But the reason to do that is to say that this is kind of a principle, or this is this dance of the masculine and the feminine principle. All these ways of expressing that. It takes place obviously between individuals in this intimate physical connection or energetic connection, but it's also really that balance that the symbol shows is actually it's really inherent in life. It's in all how we relate. It's in how we play an instrument, how we communicate with each other, how we know when to yield and when to proceed. That's really so it's really down to how we use our free will in every moment. And that's the kind of, I don't know, there's that through line from the kind of universal, you could say positive and negative, or, that universal principle, like goes right through the personality and all the way down to the actual potential of conception, and of creation of new life out of that. So I just wanted to kind of like bring that perspective for a sec. But other than that, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to all the people still commenting. It's been great to have you with us.
Yeah, Andrea, maybe next time.
Yeah, and I'll just go through these while I'm chatting. I like people. 9 people watching. Smash the like button, everyone. Yeah, all of that stuff. And this has actually been our 30th episode, so congratulations. Woo! Woo! And here's to many more. And I think we're looking at next week moving on to the question of the one great work itself. So perhaps with the question, what is the one great work? So that's a potential subject. I'm not sure if we're totally committed to that, but that's certainly on the cards. And thank you so much, everyone. I will now click the right button. Understood. Okay, thanks everyone. See you
Thank
See you
you.
next time.